Okay. Oh, it's time to stretch. It's been a long 2 weeks off for the politicians. Welcome back to the stream, everybody. Welcome back to Question Period. This is going to be a good one. There is lots of built-up tension since they've been off for 2 weeks, and politicians have been out doing their thing. So it's not like it's just been 2 weeks of radio silence. It's just been 2 weeks of questions without any answers. Before we get into it, I do want to encourage everyone to smash the like button and subscribe, folks. We're a pinch away. We're a carbon tax away from... Shit, I make myself laugh. We're a carbon tax away from having 100,000 subscribers on this channel. It doesn't inherently mean anything. It is a milestone, however. It's something to be proud of, not just me, but also the community. You guys joining the chat, engaging in the live chat, watching the videos, commenting, all of those great things. And then we get, I say we because I wouldn't be doing this. I wouldn't have reached this milestone, or wouldn't be close to reaching this milestone without you guys. So we will have a second play button right here. This is the Mistersunshinebaby one, and once the House Canada one is in, they'll be mounted on the wall with a nice little glowing light around it or something of the sort. So I'll have to look into how to do that, but nonetheless, it's just a cute little thing to have in the background that we all participated in. So welcome back, folks. This is gonna be a great one. Buckle up, subscribe if you're not already. Like I said, I hope you consider turning post notifications on so you can actually be notified of upcoming live streams. They're going to be on for a week, I think off for a week. We're very, very close to the summer break. It is, I think there's 15 weeks away, and there's 10 weeks of actual question period happening. I think I did the math. I looked at the schedule. So we're right around the corner from them taking a very long break. So let's all gather and rally together as a community and enjoy the shit show together and laugh and comment and engage and see what we can come up with in terms of a community before we all start drowning in the carbon tax. And we're a week and a bit, 2 weeks away from the carbon tax 2.0 being inflicted on Canadians. So yeah, it's not looking good. If you're not laughing, you're definitely going to be crying. Anyways, I'll shut up and I'll share my screen. They are currently doing, I believe, statements by members. I'm just looking at the screen right now. So there's about 10-15 minutes before question period begins. So get your drinks, get your coffee. I've got my mug right here with, of course, my stickers that are available, linked down in the description or the pinned comment of the live stream chat. And let's get into it, folks.
We all recognize the need to keep working together to advance gender equality. And this year's theme underscored this. We must invest in women to accelerate progress. And we must not let regressive forces push us back. Happy International Women's Day.
Didn't that come and go?
L'honorable député d'Abitibi-Témiscamingue.
The honourable member for Abitibi-Témiscamingue. On March 2nd, we lost a unique figure in the Quebec media and artistic spheres. Paul Oud died much too young at the age of 69. He had many talents. He was an exceptional communicator and a living encyclopedia. He had in-depth knowledge of many subjects and a deep mastery of the French language. His varied career included being a radio host, as well as participating in the show La Fin du Monde est à 7 heures. He also played Fernand in Les Boys. He was an improbable ambassador of the Chicago Blackhawks in Quebec, and everyone appreciated his kindness and generosity. Our sincere condolences to his family and loved ones. He had an incredible memory, and he will also have marked all of our memories. Even his character, Nostradamus.
Hello?
Of the Chicago Blackhawks in Quebec, and everyone appreciated his kindness and generosity. Our sincere condolences to his family and loved ones. He had an incredible memory, and he will also have marked all of our memories. Even his character, Nostradamus, could have predicted it. He will not leave our collective memory anytime soon. Paul Oud is not dead, he's just in overtime.
The honourable member from Winnipeg North.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, just recently I was in the Philippines with the Minister of Agriculture, and we actually opened the very first.
Let me know down below, folks, how much you guys are paying for gas. Currently, it's like $160, $165 where I'm at in northern BC.
In recent history has done more in terms of enhancing trade opportunities. This office is going to serve over 40 countries, and it's going to be located in Metro Manila, Mr. Speaker. When you think of agriculture, think of $30 billion in 2023. Add another $70 billion when you think of agri-food industry, Mr. Speaker. Think of the potential that has for the creation of jobs, for the food security in the world. There is so much more that we can do, Mr. Speaker, and this is a government that believes in trade and believes in getting the agreements and getting the job done. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Wow.
You are so brave.
Mr. Speaker, after 8 years of this Prime Minister, crime and chaos, hard drugs and disorder rage in our streets. Adnan Polat has owned Gold Rush Jewelers in Maple Ridge for decades. He's closing his store for a new location because of rampant drug crimes and threats. In British Columbia, over 2,500 people, a record, died last year from overdoses, and over 40,000 have died since the Liberals have come into power. The Liberals and NDP's dangerous self-supply experiment has ruined the lives of countless Canadians and devastated communities. In a Prince George drug bust, the RCMP discovered more than 10,000 morphine and hydromorphone pills coming from the government's safe supply program. They got into the hands of drug dealers who prey and destroy the most vulnerable. Common sense conservatives will stop spending taxpayers' dollars on dangerous drugs. We will support treatment and recovery to bring our loved ones home drug-free.
The honourable member from Ottawa West Nepean.
Mr. Speaker, recently I visited the grade 6 social entrepreneurship class at St. Gregory Catholic School in my riding. These smart and creative kids have raised over $700 for the Ottawa Food Bank by making and selling greeting cards and 3D printed items like jewelry and keychains and selling them on Shopify. Through work-based learning, they use their business skills to address UN Sustainable Development Goal 2, Zero Hunger. These students, with the guidance of their teacher, Susan Goslin, and mentor, Jeremy McQuigg, are learning skills that they're applying in order to make a better world. They told me that they just want to ensure that everyone goes home to food on their plate. Their social enterprise is called Every Bite Counts. By helping others, including those that they may never meet, these inspiring kids understand that when our neighbors do well, we all do well. These grade 6 students inspire me and give me hope. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from Nepean.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to recognize Black History Ottawa, which emerged from the activities of Barbados Ottawa Association and from the Black History Month Committee formed in 1986. Since then, every February, this organization has been celebrating Black History Month in the nation's capital. Their activities honor the numerous achievements and contributions of Canadians of African, Caribbean, and Black heritage in fields such as sciences, medicine, literature, the arts, and sports. They also serve to acknowledge the roles Blacks have played in the growth and development of Canadian society and culture. I would like to recognize and thank the key leaders associated with Black History Ottawa, including but not limited to June Girwan, Godwin Efudi, Joanne Robinson, Sarah Onyango, and Jean-Marie Garrier. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from Hastings, Lennox-Naddington.
Mr. Speaker, we are in a grim situation as the affordability crisis is getting worse. Groceries, rent, mortgages, heating, medication, the price of everything has increased to unmanageable levels under 8 years of this Liberal NDP government. At CFP Gagetown in New Brunswick, upwards of 50 military families are forced to use the local food bank. Instead of delivering relief to the struggling single parent, families, students, or seniors, they want to hike the carbon tax by 23% over the next 6 years. The Independent Parliamentary Budget Officer confirmed that most families will pay more in tax than what they receive via rebate. This is not partisan noise, Mr. Speaker. This is fact. Canadians can take solace in knowing that when this Liberal NDP government is finally defeated, the common-sense Conservative government will axe the tax and bring fiscal stewardship home to Ottawa. Let's bring it home.
The honourable member from Scarborough Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this month, millions of Muslims across Canada and around the world, including my family and I, are celebrating the holy
Let's try and get to 500 likes, folks, before question period begins. I believe we're halfway there right now.
And becoming closer to our faith.
Smash that like
it's
button if
usually
you
a
haven't.
time of community and of celebration. But this year, when we gather, we speak of Gaza. As we eat our dates, we think of the innocent Palestinian people forced into starvation. We think about the mothers desperately grinding up animal feed to feed their children, about the young children who have woken up in the hospital, still in shock, to find out their parents were killed by Israeli airstrikes. My prayer for Ramadan, as it has been for many months, is immediate and just ceasefire, return of all hostages and prisoners, and unimpeded humanitarian aid. My prayers are for peace and justice. Bravo.
The honourable member from Dolphin, Swan River, Nipawin.
After 8 years of this NDP Liberal Prime Minister, Canadians are turning to food banks at record rates. We just learned that in Toronto alone, the Daily Bread Food Bank served over 300,000 people this February. Wow. That's up from 52,000 people in 2015. Shameful. Now this NDP Liberal government wants to hike their punishing carbon tax on food, heat and groceries by 23% as part of their plan to quadruple the carbon tax. What a cruel April Fool's joke to play on Canadians. According to the Parliamentary Budget Officer, the average Manitoba family will pay $1,750 in carbon tax. That's far more than any rebate, Mr. Speaker. No wonder why 70% of Canadian premiers and 70% of Canadians are opposed to the Prime Minister's carbon tax hike. Only common-sense Conservatives will stand with Canadians against this Prime Minister's failed carbon tax. It's time to spike the hike and axe the carbon tax. Well done.
The honourable member from Tobique-Mactaquac.
Mr. Speaker, 7 out of 10 premiers around the country have stood against this Liberal carbon tax. Now even the Liberal Premier of Newfoundland has come out and said that it's not working and is not worth the cost. The Prime Minister responded by saying, I think Mr. Furey is continuing to bow to political pressure. Mr. Speaker, this isn't just political pressure. This is the overwhelming consensus of Canadians from coast to coast to coast. This government is elected to be the servant of the people, not their master. And the people are speaking clearly. When will they listen to the farmers who feed us and are fed up with struggling to keep up with the soaring input cost coming from this costly coalition? When will they listen to the single mother who has had to choose between heating or eating for her family, and the senior who lays awake worrying about how they're going to manage yet another tax hike while on their fixed incomes? When will they listen to rural Canadians who have no options for heating their homes or transportation? When will this government finally start to hear the cries of Canadians who want to axe the tax and hike this spike in the tax?
L'honorable député de Bourassa.
The honourable member for Bourassa. Mr. Speaker, this year once again, thanks to International Women's Day, I had the opportunity to honour 8 exceptional female citizens who are contributing to the quality of life in Bourassa. I'd like to thank all of the elected officials who joined me in order to celebrate these women who have done a great deal in our riding. Mr. Speaker, women's struggle is our struggle. For the 7th edition,
yes, it is.
I was pleased to give medals to 8 women in Bourassa: Elena Adipietro, Julie Bessette, Julie Mayer, Renée Dagenet, Huguette Péloquin, Keisha Estimé, Yves Torres, and Sly Toussaint. I'd like to congratulate all of them. Thank you.
The honourable member from Hamilton Centre.
Today I will read into the record what legal expert Dr. Artie Amisis has to say on the legal framework for Palestinian statehood. Palestine is recognized by 140 states. Palestine is a juridical fact. Its territory is under illegal foreign military occupation by Israel, but that does not mean the state of Palestine does not exist in law. It possesses all four of the criterion for statehood as codified the 1933 Montevideo Convention on the Rights and Duties of States. It has a permanent population, a territory, a government, and the capacity to enter into foreign relations with other states. Successive Israeli governments have for years indicated that they will never allow the establishment of an independent Palestinian state, and that only Jewish people have the right to jurisdiction, self-determination in the land between the river and the sea. This is unlawful. As a preemptory norm, no people's right to self-determination in their own territory can be subject to negotiation under international law. This is Canada's last chance for the only framework for a two-state solution. Where will this Liberal government stand today on Palestinian statehood?
The Honourable Member for Abitibi, James Nanavikiu. Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the Bloc Québécois, I would like to
speechless about that one, folks. Holy smokes.
To the Ottawa Sri Lankan community, which was hit hard on March the 6th. We offer our deepest condolences to the Sri Lankan community and all those who were affected by this horrifying situation, especially the families and friends of the victims. Mr. Speaker, it is truly heartbreaking.
None of them ever wear like a Canadian flag or Canadian
and whose life has been completely upended by the terrible loss of his spouse and their 4 children. We hope that he will receive all the support that he needs to get through this inconceivably tragic situation. I hope that such a thing will never happen again. Let us try together to find ways to reduce violence, which leads only to misery, loss, and tears. Our heart stands with Barrhaven. Thank you.
Dude, 4 people just texted me, literally right now, like friends who are watching this stream. Oh my God. Oh my God. About what that NDP member just said about Palestine. He just said their government is legitimate. The government is literally terrorist Hamas right now. Holy smokes. That is gonna backfire.
Gary. After 8 years of this Prime Minister, life has never been more expensive, and to make matters worse, the Prime Minister is going to play a cruel joke on Canadians on April 1st, hiking the carbon tax again, this time by 23%, as part of his plans with the NDP to quadruple the carbon tax on everyone. That's why 70% of Canadians in 7 premiers are demanding a stop to this latest tax hike. Even the provincial Liberals now in Ontario and New Brunswick are getting out against these never-ending tax hikes. After 8 years, Mr. Speaker, even Liberals now know that this Prime Minister is just not worth the cost. The only ones that don't seem to get it are the NDP Liberal coalition.
Yo, I got goosebumps from that clip.
Meanwhile, it is getting worse as food banks are bracing for an extra 1 million visits to food banks this year. Our common sense plan is clear. Axe the tax for everyone, good. It's time for the Prime Minister, the NDP, and the Liberals smartened up, spike the hike, and axe the tax.
The honourable member from Labrador.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is with deep sadness that I rise today to pay tribute to a remarkable woman, politician, entrepreneur, and friend. Former MP Kim Rudd, who represented the riding of Northumberland, Peterborough South from 2015 to 2019, recently passed away after a long battle with cancer. Kim worked hard for her constituency and for Canadians. She served as a parliamentary secretary, chair of the Health Research Caucus, and on a number of committees. She was a strong supporter of women and of the mining industry and the nuclear industry, knowing that the resource sector...
All right, folks, we're almost at 500 likes. Let's see if we can get there before question period begins.
She was a fierce fighter in her battle with cancer and used her experience to advocate for new research in ovarian cancer and for women's health. But most importantly, Kim was a wife, a mother, and a grandmother, a loyal and beautiful friend who will be deeply missed. Her hard work and commitment lit the way for others and left this world a better place. Let's carry that torch for Kim in her fight for women and for all Canadians. Today, we send our deepest sympathies to her husband, Tom, her daughters, Allison and Stephanie, their partners, and her 4 grandchildren, and we thank Kim for her contributions to our country. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Pierre standing. Are we about to begin? I'm going to do my thing.
Questions orales.
Oral questions. Questions orales. I noticed the House Speaker did it the opposite this time. Yo!
Of this Prime Minister.
Is it just me or does that black suit with the black tie look
are working to fix the budget, stop crime, and build homes, but the Prime Minister not only wants to impose a new 17 cents a litre tax on gas with the support of the NDP and the Bloc, he now wants to impose a decree to close the forestry sector in Quebec. Why does the Prime Minister want
Men in Black
step on Quebec's jurisdiction to kill jobs in the forestry sector? The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker. Since 2013, Quebec has put in place its own process and for putting a price on carbon. The province is not under the federal regime. The Conservative leader continues to show to what extent he doesn't understand Quebecers by promising to demolish a system that Quebec decided to put in place itself over 10 years ago. It's the Conservative leader who does not respect provincial jurisdiction. The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition. Apparently, there was an interpretation.
Someone in the comments said
the question was about the forestry sector.
Pierre's wearing a black suit with a black tie because he's mourning for the Liberals.
A decree which violates Quebec's jurisdiction. Meanwhile, common sense Conservatives want to defend workers in the forestry sector. Meanwhile, in the Journal de Montréal, we read that these people are hungry. People have had to, the police have had to intervene twice in distributing food baskets. So why is the Prime Minister, with his tax and inflationary deficits, continuing to make people hungry? The Honourable Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker. The Conservatives are the ones who want to reduce all of the social supports that the federal government now offers to Quebecers. The only thing that the Conservatives understand how to do is cut. They want to cut support for those less fortunate, but we will be there. And we will not let the Conservatives cut this necessary aid.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
While common sense Conservatives are fighting to axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, and stop the crime, this Prime Minister is promising a cruel April Fool's Day joke, a 23% carbon tax hike on food, gas, and groceries. This at a time when the Prime Minister has forced 50 families at CFB at Gagetown, military families, to go to food banks. 2 million Canadians every month going to those same food banks, 8,000 as part of a Facebook group where they share tips on eating out of dumpsters. Will the Prime Minister gain some compassion and some common sense and spike the hike?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, we will take no lessons from the Conservatives when it comes to supporting
clearly, that's why you're tanking in the polls.
Our country. This is the party that wants to cut the Canada Child benefit. This is the party that wants to cut support to our seniors. This is the party that wants to cut early learning and child care, which supports so many families. They're opposed to dental care. They're opposed to pharmacare, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Fear and falsehoods to distract from the fact that after 8 years of this Prime Minister, he's not worth the cost, and neither is his carbon tax, which will cost the average Ontario family this coming year $1,674. $1,674 for a middle-class family that's lined up at a food bank, not able to feed themselves or pay their heating bill. Will the Prime Minister give his head a shake, cancel his cruel April Fool's Day joke, and spike the hike?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Mr. Speaker, no one here is surprised to hear the Conservative leader talk about fear and falsehoods because that is what he traffics in every single day. It's his area of personal expertise. Now, what he is proposing is, at least he is consistent. He wants to cut the support that Canadians get, and he wants to cut the support Canadian families are getting from the price on pollution. That's $1,800 Alberta families won't get. That's $1,120 Ontario families won't get. Cut. All they know how to do.
Yeah, and they're going to save a lot of money by not paying the carbon tax.
So she just brags that Alberta families will get $1,800, but according to the Parliamentary Budget Officer, the carbon tax will cost Alberta families $2,943. The Prime Minister takes away $2,943 and gives back $1,800. Mr. Speaker, it's almost like he's a bank robber who thinks that he's virtuous because he tips the teller on the way out the door. Why won't he
Oh! He did it again! Deputy, drop some W's in the chat, folks.
Mr. Speaker, the Conservative leader should know a lot about living off the public purse. That's all he has done his entire life. Now, when it comes to the price on pollution, this is entirely revenue neutral. The government does not keep a penny. It returns more money to 8 out of 10 Canadian families. That's a good deal for Canadians, Mr. Speaker.
Partisan attacks, eh?
The Honourable Member for La Prairie.
Pierre stood up anyways. Pierre stood up anyways.
This Prime Minister... sorry, I'll interrupt the member from La Prairie, but his microphone wasn't on, so I will ask the Honourable Member from La Prairie to restart from the beginning, please. On Friday, the Premier of Quebec met with this Prime Minister to ask for full power for Quebec when it comes to immigration. And this Prime Minister said, no, but that's not all. Did the Prime Minister commit to adjusting immigration levels to meet the ability to welcome people? No. Did he commit to doing his fair part to helping with asylum seekers? No. Did he commit to accelerating the processing of requests and the granting of work permits? No. All day he said, no. If he doesn't want to deal with immigration, why is he preventing Quebec from doing it? The Honourable Minister of Immigration, Citizenship and Refugees. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There is no country in the world, no federal state in the world which would give all immigration powers to a federated state. We have a major agreement with Quebec that's in place, the Canada-Quebec Agreement, which gives a great deal of power to Quebec. There's responsibility on both sides, Canada and Quebec. We will continue our great relationship with Quebec and continue to work, particularly on the temporary workers file. The Honourable Member for La Prairie. Nobody has ever taught this Prime Minister that he could say yes, that he could be a partner, that he has the responsibility to bring solutions and compromises to meetings on immigration. And yet, there's no additional power for Quebec, no money for asylum seekers, no help with welcoming, no accelerating work permits or processing of requests. Not even any thoughts, any ideas on the ability to welcome people. And, you know, the Prime Minister said that he found his job difficult and maybe boring on the weekend. Is that why he's not doing it? The Honourable Minister of Immigration. I wonder what $5.2 billion means for the member across the way. Since 2015, our government, under the Canada-Quebec Agreement, has contributed that. It's a good relationship we have. There was a good meeting on Friday. The member across the way refuses to admit it. There's work that we can continue to do with both governments, and we will continue to do that.
That dude is not trustworthy at all, eh?
The people of Gaza are facing unspeakable violence.
Where's your Palestinian...
Thousands of children have been killed. And vital supplies like food, medicine, and water are scarce. Today, the NDP is calling on the government to do everything in its power to stop the violence and release the hostages. Will the Prime Minister vote today for peace?
The Honourable Minister for Foreign Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, I agree with my honourable colleague. The violence must stop. Hostages must be released. Humanitarian aid must go into Gaza. We need to make sure that Israeli and Palestinian civilians are protected. And that is the position of the government. We will be there to make sure that there is long-term peace in the region, and of course to make sure that there is to make sure that the Jewish community and the Muslim community and all communities across the country are well secured and can live peacefully here as well at home.
Wow, you're so brave.
Member for Burnaby South.
Canadians are watching, and they're going to see how this government votes. La violence qu'on voit en Palestine.
The violence that we're seeing in Palestine and Gaza cannot continue. Civilians are being killed for crimes they did not commit. Our motion calls for actions that the Liberals can take to promote peace and justice in the region. Will the Prime Minister vote for peace, yes or no? The Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Our position is clear. The hostages must be released. Humanitarian aid, more humanitarian aid must get into Gaza, and we need to make sure that there is peace and stability in the region. And that is why I was in the region recently, last week. That's why the Government of Canada, the country, Canada, we will continue to be there to work towards all solutions, which will include a two-state solution and recognition of a Palestinian state, but also with the normalization of diplomatic relations with the region.
The Honourable Member from Regina Capel.
After 8 years, this Prime Minister is not worth the cost. And thanks to his policies, millions of Canadians are visiting a food bank for the first time in their lives. And as if prices weren't high enough already, this Prime Minister is planning a 23% hike on the carbon tax in a cruel April Fool's Day joke. But the tax revolt is happening. 70% of Canadians and 70% of premiers are opposed and fighting back. Like in Saskatchewan, where the budget watchdog has determined that Saskatchewan families will pay an extra $2,620 in the carbon tax. So simple question, where are Saskatchewan families supposed to come up with $2,600 to pay his tax?
There you go. Drop some W's in the chat for Andrew Scheer.
Minister of Finance.
As well as smash the like button, folks.
Mr. Speaker, I have a lot of respect for the former Conservative leader, and he is a proud MP from the province of Saskatchewan, a province that is proud of its Ukrainian-Canadian population. Now, last week, the current Conservative leader said in a radio interview, he implied strongly he would cut all economic aid for Ukraine. This is a chance for the MP from Saskatchewan to say, does he support that shameful position? Yes or no?
Yes or no? Yes. The Honourable Member from Regina Capel.
They desperately don't want to answer for the carbon tax pain they're causing Canadians. And no one is fooled by the ridiculous rebate ruse this government is selling. That's because Canadians know that the carbon tax rebate was specifically designed to exclude all the secondary costs that go up when the producer, the shipper, and the retailer all have to pay their higher share of carbon taxes. And the average income earners, the middle income earners across Canada, are worse off even after the rebate. $900 worse off in Alberta, $500 worse off in Saskatchewan, $600 worse off in Ontario. Why doesn't the Prime Minister show some compassion and spike the hike?
Spike the hike, man. I like that. We're like 2 weeks away from this.
Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I'm glad to hear the member opposite talk about the rebate, because that is what it is. This is returning money to Canadians. 8 out of 10 families are better off. It is revenue neutral for the government. But I noticed that this Saskatchewan MP, a member of Parliament many of us on this side of the House really respect, someone who is proud to represent the people of Saskatchewan, I'd like to hear him say, does he support his leader's shameful position on Ukraine? Yes or no? The people of Saskatchewan deserve to know.
The honourable member
They always
from
deflect.
Thornhill.
Mr. Speaker, after 8 years of this NDP Liberal Prime Minister, food bank usage in Toronto is up 500%. Now they want to hike the carbon tax on gas, on groceries, on home heating by 23%, on their way to quadrupling the tax over the next 6 years. What a cruel April Fool's joke. According to the Parliamentary Budget Officer, the average Ontario family will pay $1,674 of carbon tax. Where does this Prime Minister think they're going to get that kind of money?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians can see through these Conservatives, and they know that the only thing these Conservatives know how to do is cut, 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 and the people who suffer the most are the most vulnerable. They want to cut the Canada Child Benefit. They do not support dental care, which is helping the most vulnerable among us. They do not support early learning and childcare, which is helping make life more affordable for Canadian families. They want to push Canadians into poverty. We won't let them.
Yeah, right! You're taxing us to death.
Thornhill.
Mr. Speaker, they've already done that, and we're going to cut the taxes. If you give back $1,000 to an Ontario family, but you take $1,674, Liberal math says that's more, but real math says that's less. The Prime Minister doesn't get it. He's not worth the cost, especially for the 300,000 Torontonians who ate in a food bank just last February. They are about to hike taxes by 23% in less than 2 weeks. Why is she the only person in Canada who thinks that raising taxes will lower the cost of food?
There you go, Melissa. There you go.
The Honourable Minister.
Let's get some W's in the chat from Melissa.
Mr. Speaker, if the member opposite really believes her rhetoric about supporting Canadian families, why does she think that cutting support for them will help? Why doesn't she support early learning and childcare? Why doesn't she support the Canada Child Benefit, which has helped to lift more than 2.3 million Canadians, particularly children, out of poverty? Why doesn't she support dental care, which is helping the poorest Canadians be able to take care of their health and their teeth? That is Conservative hypocrisy, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member from Peterborough, Kawartha.
After 8 years of this Liberal NDP coalition, food has never been more expensive. In fact, food is so unaffordable that 50 active serving military families from CFB Gagetown are using the Oromocto Food Bank. This is outrageous, it is shocking, and it is unacceptable. Right. So, for the 100th time, on behalf of all the Canadians and 70% of the premiers in this country, will they spike the hike, axe the tax, and make food more affordable?
The Honourable Minister for National Defence.
Mr. Speaker, that's an extraordinary comment, and I'd like to commend the member for being able to say it with a straight face.
It's an extraordinary comment, yeah, man!
Mr. Speaker, we gave
these Liberals are so dumb.
A very significant raise just last year. And when it came before this House to vote for the money for that raise, every single Conservative on that side of the House voted against it. Shame. Mr. Speaker, perhaps they should scrap the crap.
Shame.
You kiss your mom with that mouth? Is that what he just said?
I'm going to ask members to be very judicious in their use of words and to making sure, and I'll ask the Honourable Minister to be very judicious in his choice of words. The Honourable Member from Peterborough, Kawartha.
Mr. Speaker, that's exactly the lack of classy response I would expect from a Liberal. And the reality is he doesn't know what's going on because clearly he doesn't listen. These are 50 real families accessing a food bank under that Prime Minister's watch. $700 more in groceries a year for Canadian families. Low-income families are most impacted. 1 million more users of food banks this year. Students, seniors, low-income families. Right. Those are the facts. That's what we will keep fighting for. Spike the hike, axe the tax.
Yeah. The Honourable Minister of National Defence.
Mr. Speaker, many people in this House profess to support members of the Canadian Armed Forces, and yet when it came time to put your money where your mouth is, they weren't there. When it came time to vote for a pay raise for members of the Canadian Armed Forces, every single one of them voted against it. Mr. Speaker, that's the height of hypocrisy.
Shame.
Before I move to the honourable member for Salaberry-Surwa, I would just like to remind
Can we get 1,000 likes on the stream, folks?
Asking questions,
we need just 200 more people. Smash
the honourable
like
member for Salaberry-Surwa. The word out of Ottawa these days is no. No to full powers and immigration for Quebec, but also no to the right to withdraw with full compensation from the federal dental care program. No to the right to withdraw with full compensation from the federal drugs program. No early requests for medical assistance in dying. And even in healthcare, where Quebec has full powers, the answer is no. Even in programs created by Quebec, it's no. Why not respect Quebec's expertise instead of complicating or even preventing access to care? The Honourable Minister of Public Services and Procurement. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm so happy to hear our colleague talk about dental care, the new Canadian dental care program, Mr. Speaker, under which 1.4 million seniors have already asked for access. And of that 1.4 million seniors, over a third are seniors from Quebec.
We almost got 1,000 likes.
And there are more seniors from Quebec who have made a request with success than seniors from Ontario. And all that is because, Mr. Speaker, we really need this plan to help seniors get essential dental care and also to help make sure that our professionals can take care of people across the country, including in Quebec. The honourable member for Moncton. When it comes to health care, even when Ottawa and Quebec agree, the federal government threatens to say no. Quebec has resigned itself to the insufficient increase in health transfers, and yet Ottawa is threatening to cut if Quebec doesn't meet its conditions in the next 13 days. Even when Ottawa and Quebec have the same goals and when they agree, Ottawa is threatening to hold back the money if we don't sign to approve each one of its conditions. What is the federal government waiting for to give Quebecers their money back? Do we have to beg on bended knee? The Honourable Minister of Transport. Well, you know, Mr. Speaker, who's saying no? It's the Bloc Québécois. They're saying no to collaboration, no to conversations, no to partnerships, no to everything, Mr. Speaker. Meanwhile, the government is working with the government of Quebec to have a fair agreement, and we're very confident that we'll get there by the end of the month, Mr. Speaker. Why? Why? Because it's good for all Quebecers, for everyone except for the Bloc Québécois. L'honorable député de Montcalm. The honourable member for Montcalm. This government has just decided it's going to say no to everything. No to everything all the time. No to Bill 21. No to full power and immigration. No to Quebec's ability to manage health care itself, even though it's exclusive provincial jurisdiction. Imagine, today, they're saying no to Quebec's autonomy when it comes to managing its own fields of jurisdiction, despite the fact that this principle is recognized across Canada. Do the Liberals not realize to what extent they're showing a lack of respect to Quebec?
Lack of respect to Quebec.
Minister of Transport. Does the Bloc Québécois not realize the extent to which it's not showing respect to Quebecers, Mr. Speaker? And, you know, our leader... Their leader attacked the Premier of Quebec in a speech. Meanwhile, our leader is meeting with the Premier. The Bloc are the champions of no. No to agreements, no to discussion, no to collaboration. That's what the Bloc Québécois is. We are going to have an agreement by the end of the month, an agreement that's good for all Quebecers, Mr. Speaker, but not for the Bloc Québécois, apparently.
The honourable member from Coastal Bay Central, Notre Dame.
Mr. Speaker, Saturday's poll by the Voice of the Common Man revealed that 90% of Newfoundlanders and Labradorians are against the April 1st increase in carbon tax by 23%. Even the Liberal Premier, a fury, he pleaded with the Prime Minister to pause the April 1st tax hike.
That's right.
Newfoundlanders and Labradorians are sick and tired of these cruel April Fool's jokes. So after 8 years, will this NDP Liberal Prime Minister heed the plead and spike the hike, or will he once again prove that he's simply not worth the cost?
The Honourable Minister for Labour.
Mr. Speaker, on this side of the House, we will continue. We are absolutely driven to impart upon the people of Canada cold, hard cash in their pockets. That is what this rebate will do. This is not...
We're spending more with the taxes than we get back. It's common sense.
This is something that Canadians feel in their bank accounts and in their wallets and in their pockets 4 times a year. This is real cash, Mr. Speaker. We will not deny to the people of Canada. Thank you.
Please deny the tax. Deny the tax to me.
After 8 years, this Liberal Prime Minister is just not worth the cost for Canadian farmers. On April 1st, the Prime Minister is going to increase the carbon tax 23%, and the impact on Canadian food production is staggering. A grain farmer in Simcoe County paid $36,000 in the carbon tax in 1 month. The carbon tax cost a poultry farmer in Alberta $180,000 last year. The food professor, Dr. Sylvain Charlebois, advised the Liberals to spike the hike or see wholesale food costs go up 34%. Wow. Food production is no joke. Will the Prime Minister spike the hike so farmers can afford to grow food?
The Honourable Minister for Agriculture and Agri-Food.
Mr. Speaker, my honourable colleague is well aware that farmers are on the front line of climate change. He's also fully aware that we have a climate change environmental plan. He's also aware that his constituents receive $1,800 a year in their bank account. Is that what you want to cut? $1,800 out of your constituents' bank account?
We know we're paying more than we're getting back.
Remind ministers to make sure that their answers go through the chair. Also invite all members to do that. The reason why that's done is so that there is always a sense that there is not personal attacks when members are asking questions or making responses. The Honourable Member from Foothills.
My constituents are fully aware that Liberals are taking away $2,900 and giving them back $1,800. That is not revenue neutral. But here are the facts. The Liberals are increasing the cost of food yet again on April 1st by increasing the carbon tax by 23%. This is driving Canadians to food banks in unprecedented numbers. The Caring Covered Food Bank in Prince Edward Island is struggling just to keep its doors open. It can't handle the increase in demand, up 70%, 5,500 families. I know the Prime Minister is bored, but will he listen to Canadians, axe the tax, so Canadians can put food on the table?
He knows the Prime Minister's bored. That was a real thing that Trudeau said, that he's actually bored.
Mr. Speaker,
that was a really good comment.
It's very surprising to hear the member opposite talk about support for the most vulnerable Canadians. But I'm glad he is turning his attention there. So if he cares about the families of PEI, I want to understand, does he support our early learning and childcare system, which PEI has been enthusiastically a part of, which is putting money back in the pockets of PEI families? Does he support that? Does he support dental care that the seniors of PEI are enthusiastically supportive of? That is real support.
The Honourable Member from Vancouver East.
After 2 months, I'm aware of nearly 2,000 loved ones in Gaza are still waiting to receive a code from IRCC to reunite with their families in Canada.
From the IRGC?
The 1,000 arbitrary cap is a problem. And even for those with codes, not one person has made it to safety, not even people whose biometrics is completed. Meanwhile, families are reporting that their loved ones have been killed in an airstrike. Why can't Canada get people across the border when other countries can? And what will it take for the minister to lift that cap?
The Honourable Minister for Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It'll perhaps be cold comfort for the member opposite to find out that
this guy looks like a Canadian version of Mark Zuckerberg, like a lizard robot or something.
There are a number of matters that are beyond our control, notably the ability to extract people from the Rafah Gate. That is something that falls within matters of other governments, which I don't know what it is. We plead with them to let those people out. But again, we will be relentless in advocating for people reunifying with their family members in Canada, if but for on a temporary basis. Thank you.
The honourable member from Hamilton Centre.
Starvation of civilians during war is absolutely prohibited under Article 54 of the Geneva Conventions. A UN food agency just reported that due to the Israeli siege on Gaza, 1.1
Matthew
million
Green, NDP member for Hamilton Centre, Ontario,
and the EU Foreign Policy
recognizes
Chief
Hamas
Joseph
as
Borrell
the official
stated that
government
Israel is provoking famine in Gaza
Palestine.
and using starvation as a weapon of war. So my question is, did the Foreign Affairs Minister at any point during her high-level meetings with the two Israeli cabinet ministers named in the ICJ proceedings raise the plight of starving Palestinians in Gaza forced into famine by Israel?
The Honourable Minister for Foreign Affairs.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I did. And you know what? I will never shy away from having difficult conversations. Maybe with the Israeli government, maybe with the Palestinian Authority. And we need to make sure.
Notice how she didn't say Palestinian government? Because the leaders of Palestine isn't that
Hamas, a
Hamas?
terrorist organization, to release hostages. We support the discussions that are happening with Qatar, Egypt, the U.S., to make sure, and of course Israel, to make sure that the hostages are released. And we need to make sure that there's more humanitarian access to Gaza, including the support of UNRWA. Thank you so much.
The honourable member from Newmarket, Aurora.
Mr. Speaker, in recent months, we've heard lots of stories about Canadians with disabilities receiving unacceptable treatment while traveling with Canadian Airlines. Canadians with disabilities,
if you hit the three-digit
as all of us,
number for your age, I don't think you should be
treated with dignity.
An elected MP.
Minister of Transport
I feel like this guy's 101.
Our airlines need to do a better job for Canadians. So, can he tell us what's happening next?
Yeah. I feel like if there's a gust of wind, he's just going to crumble.
I want to thank my colleague for his amazing work. And I've been clear, what happened was completely unacceptable. All Kenyans must be treated with dignity and respect, full stop. Airlines have to do better. We all have to do better. And the Minister of Diversity, Inclusion, and Persons with Disability and I want to see action now, which is why I'm announcing an Air Accessibility Summit in Ottawa on May 9th. We have to work together to ensure a more accessible, a more inclusive Canada. This is about fairness, dignity, and respect.
The Honourable Member for Mégantic-L'Érable. After 8 years of this Liberal government, Quebec farmers are feeling the pinch. Tax hikes, inflation, and carbon pricing, which the Bloc would like to radically increase, have led to a general feeling of frustration, according to the president of the Union des Producteurs Agricoles. He says with the rise in interest rates plus the increase in input costs, net farm income is plummeting, and we're talking about virtually zero net income in 2024. Will the Liberal and Bloc MPs listen to the farmers' frustration and vote against the 23% carbon tax hike on April 1st? The Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, I hope that the member across the way understands that Quebec, the province of Quebec, has its own carbon price system. This system was established in 2013 under Quebec's jurisdiction. And I think Quebecers have the right to know if the Conservative Party and the member across the way intend to demolish Quebec's system in place, whether they intend to do this. The Honourable Member for Mégantic-L'Érable.
Why does it always look like she's smelling farts, man?
In the Lower St. Lawrence region, 500 farmers escorted by 200 tractors. Also on the North Shore in Quebec City. It's a real cry from the heart that our farmers are launching across the province. While farm closures multiply, the Liberals, supported by the Bloc, think it's a good idea to raise taxes on diesel, Mr. Speaker. The Bloc-Liberal coalition has increased the taxes for those who produce food so that Quebecers can they give up these taxes so Quebecers can continue to eat locally? The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, I feel that the Premier of Quebec was Mr. Legault and not the member across the way. And it's Quebec that has its own system.
Can somebody tell me what's wrong with her face?
Carbon pricing. This system is working very well. This system has the support of Quebecers. and the province supports it. We do respect Quebec's jurisdiction and that of the system it's established. The Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent. Mr. Speaker, after 8 years of this Liberal government, Canadians know that this government likes to meddle in provincial jurisdiction. Now the latest attack is on woodland caribou. We support the 1,600 workers in this sector, but now this Liberal Environment Minister wants to meddle in areas that are none of his business. This question is for the Deputy Prime Minister. Will they not tell their Minister of the Environment to put aside his ideological politics and side with the workers instead? The Honourable Minister of the Environment and Climate Change. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to remind my honourable colleague that more than a year ago, the Quebec government and the federal government signed a letter together.
Well, if it isn't our little
under
rock
which we
climber.
commit to protecting 70% of the caribou's habitat. And this agreement also set out consultations with the Indigenous peoples on this plan. The Quebec government committed to do this, and we expect the Quebec government to respect their word. Thank you. To keep their word. The Honourable Member for Charlesbourg au Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, the former Judge DeLille was convicted of premeditated murder of his wife in 2012. The decision was upheld on appeal and at the Supreme Court. In 2021, David Lametti intervened to request another trial, saying he was convinced that there had been a miscarriage of justice. But the report from the review group unveiled Thursday that there is no miscarriage of justice. Is the government denouncing the preferential treatment given to former Judge DeLille by the former Minister of Justice, David Lametti? I'd like to thank the member for his question. What I'd like to stress is that we're aware of the situation.
Why does this guy look like a greasy lawyer?
The Honourable Member for Saint-Jean.
Who needs to wear a baseball cap?
Quebec sets its own immigration targets, they say, and we've said this many times. It's even more unacceptable 2 weeks ago that the minister order his officials to exceed the threshold set by Quebec. It's a serious precedent. From now on, the federal government will interpret Quebec's immigration targets not as a decision, but as a suggestion. It's the imposition on Quebec of federal immigration policies inspired by the Century Initiative in direct affront of the spirit of the Canada-Quebec Accord. Will the minister back down and return to discussions with Quebec? The Honourable Minister of Immigration and Refugees. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm ready to answer the question when the member did read if she can reassure me that she did read the accord, the Honourable Member. I'll be pleased to say that I did do so. But the federal government has absolutely no lessons to give Quebec in terms of successful immigration. It's the federal government that has plunged immigrants into the worst housing crisis in recent years, and it's responsible for the service breakdowns for asylum seekers. It's the minister's fault that these people don't have the right to work to meet their basic needs. So no, we're not going to accept him unilaterally increasing immigration targets chosen by Quebec. Once again, will the minister respect Quebec's choices? The Honourable Minister of Immigration. Mr. Speaker, I have a question to ask the member across the way. What does she say to Quebec families who are waiting to be reunited with their families and their loved ones?
The Honourable Member from South Surrey, White Rock.
In British Columbia, the carbon tax is going up 23% on April 1st. After 8 years of this NDP Liberal government, middle-income families are depending on food banks. They receive absolutely nothing. No federal tax rebate, no provincial tax credit. But they do get higher prices for food, gas, and heating. 7 of 10 premiers are demanding the Prime Minister spike the hike, but the NDP Premier of BC is cheering it on. Will the Prime Minister stop the suffering and authorize Premier Eby to spike the hike on April 1st?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, as with the Conservative Quebec MPs, we are hearing a question that demonstrates either profound ignorance or profound disrespect of the system that the province of BC put in place. BC in 2008, led by a center-right provincial government, put in place a world-leading price on pollution. That system is popular. That system was voted for by some current Conservative federal MPs from BC. Do they want to tear it apart?
The honourable member from South Surrey, White Rock.
Thank you, Ms. Speaker. We absolutely do, because that was a baloney answer from this minister, and that's what we're getting from the BC Premier as well. There's 200,000 British Columbians relying on food banks in a single month now. The tax credit shell game, if you qualify, is way less than you pay. BC already has the highest gas prices, $2 a litre just this morning. A 23% hike will force up prices another 18 cents a litre. This Prime Minister isn't worth the cost. Will he show some compassion and authorize the BC Premier to spike the hike on April 1st?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, did the MP from BC just accuse the Premier of BC of putting forward baloney policies for the people of BC?
Yeah. Yeah, you heard that right. Are you deaf?
Is the Federal Conservative Party intending to step on the jurisdiction of the province of BC?
No, criticize.
To go against a system put in place in 2008 by a center-right BC provincial government that the people of BC support. That is astonishing, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from Central.
Wow, she's really reaching.
Mr. Speaker, after 8 years of this NDP Liberal government, more and more British Columbians are lining up at food banks. That's not baloney. The fact that many can't afford to drive with $1.99 a litre gas isn't baloney either. What's also not baloney is on page 75 of the BC's 2024 budget, where the provincial government blames this Prime Minister for forcing a 23% carbon tax hike on April 1st. Will the Prime Minister help sandwich British Columbians and spike the hike? Or do British Columbians need to throw him out like an old, spoiled, stale pack of baloney? Hey.
Holy shit.
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, let's just remember that every single one of the Conservative MPs in this House today ran on a platform promising a price on pollution. And let's just remember that the BC caucus of that party includes MPs who, when they were in the provincial legislature, voted for British Columbia's current world-leading price on pollution. So Canadians and the people of BC have to ask themselves, do they even know what they campaigned on and what they voted for?
Oh, Freeland is getting stomped on today.
Mr. Speaker,
no wonder Trudeau didn't show up.
Every member of Parliament, a happy Francophonie month. Mr. Speaker, in the last budget, our government announced its action plan for official languages with significant measures that include a historic $4.1 billion to help official language minority communities across Canada, including Acadia and New Brunswick. Could the Minister of Official Languages tell us about recent measures announced for the Francophonie Month? The Honourable Minister of Official Languages. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank my honourable colleague for his tireless work on behalf of Acadians and the Canadian Francophonie. Our government is making record investments in official language minority communities. Last week, we announced a $62.5 million boost for more than 300 organizations across the country. And with these investments, we're ensuring strong, vibrant, and diverse communities. I'd like to join my colleague to wish you and everyone here in this House a happy Francophonie month.
The honourable member from Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands and Rideau Lakes.
This NDP Liberal government has been trying to cover up the full cost of their $60 million Arrive scam. And after 8 years of this Prime Minister and his NDP Liberal government, they're not worth the cost or the corruption. And he's been hiding the documents, and we've been hearing the paper shredders, but his homework is due today. So the question is to the Prime Minister, at what time will he respect the common sense Conservative motion that was passed by this House and deliver all of the documents and the full cost of his Arrive scam scandal?
The honourable Minister for Public Works.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As many ministers, including the CVSC minister, has said often, what happened during COVID-19 when regarding the application was unacceptable, despite the fact that it was built in a moment at which it was important for public servants to be efficient and acting quickly. Unfortunately, some of the rules were not followed, and there's more work to do, although much of the work that the Auditor General asked us to do has already been implemented.
The honourable member from Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Island, Rideau Lakes.
Well, what the Auditor General asked in terms of information, this government didn't even want to provide. That's why they voted against having the Auditor General investigate this Prime Minister's $60 million Arrive scam. It's clear that after 8 years of this NDP Liberal government that they're not worth the corruption or worth the cost. That $60 million, Speaker, was for outside consultants. It wasn't for public servants who needed to act quickly. It was for Ottawa insiders who are getting rich, being made millionaires while Canadians struggle and are now lined up at food banks. This Prime Minister's had weeks. He won't stand up, but we've ordered him to provide the documents. At what time will they be provided?
The honourable Minister for Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, from the very beginning, our government has been transparent with Canadians. In Parliament, we've had officials, we've had ministers before Parliament.
No one believes that one.
We understand the concern that Canadians have around the appropriate use of taxpayers' money. And Mr. Speaker, in spite of my friend's pessimism, I don't share his view that this government will always continue to be transparent with Canadians around this matter.
The honourable member from Fort Saskatchewan, Sherwood Park.
After 8 years, the Arrive scam scandal has made clear again that this NDP Liberal government and this Prime Minister are not worth the cost or the corruption. That's right. Liberals gave GC Strategies $20 million for Arrive scam alone. Now, last week, Christian Firth from GC Strategies revealed that he got at least $2,600 per hour for subcontracting. Canadians are struggling to put food on the table, and Liberals are giving well-connected consultants multi-millions at $2,600 per hour.
Unbelievable.
Simple question. Do Liberals believe that $2,600 per hour was a reasonable rate?
Was it reasonable? The honourable Minister for Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, as my colleague knows very well, there are internal investigations being conducted into all these matters. We welcome the report of the Auditor General. The RCMP is investigating some elements of this matter. And Mr. Speaker, if at any time people have misused taxpayers' money or contractors have claimed taxpayers' money for work they didn't complete, of course the government will demand refunds as is appropriate.
The honourable member from Cloverdale, Langley City.
Mr. Speaker, earlier this month, legislation was introduced in the other place, that affirms the Government of Canada's recognition of the Haida Nation as the holder of inherent rights of governance and self-determination. These types of bills are needed as we move forward on the path of reconciliation with Indigenous communities. Can the Minister of Crown Indigenous Relations tell us what this means for the Haida Nation located on the Haida Gwaii Archipelago off British Columbia's north coast?
The Honourable Minister for Crown Indigenous Relations.
Mr. Speaker, this marks a historical milestone for the Haida Nation. It is 50 years in the making, and it would rightfully recognize the Council of the Haida Nation as the government of the Haida people. This long overdue step solidifies Haida's authority, ensuring the protection of the beautiful lands and waters of Haida Gwaii for generations to come. I'm grateful to the nation for their collaboration and the member from Cloverdale, Langley City for this question, as well as his leadership on the INAN Committee. We will keep working to uphold the rights of the Haida Nation, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
The honourable member from Nanaimo, Ladysmith.
Mr. Speaker, for 5 months, the Liberals have sat idly by while 30,000 civilians in Palestine have been killed, most of which have been women and children. It's devastating. Canada needs to take a stand for peace so that no one else is killed, not sitting on the sidelines. We need a ceasefire, real humanitarian aid, and the release of all hostages. Will the Liberals finally join so many across Canada and New Democrats by voting in support of our motion for peace and justice?
The Honourable Minister for Foreign Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to thank my colleague for her important question. Indeed, we believe in peace and stability in the region, and it starts with the release of all hostages. We need to make sure that humanitarian aid gets into Gaza. And of course, we need to get to a humanitarian ceasefire, which will bring long and lasting peace to Israel and also support a two-state solution. And
Canada wants to directly be responsible for that, or starting World War III.
Palestinians have suffered for the fact that we haven't found a solution to this conflict. We need to be there to support them, and we will be.
No, let's focus more on what happens here in Canada.
Athabasca. Mr. Speaker, since the Liberal government was elected in 2015, we've been treated to deficits every single year. The country's debt has been exploding, and since then, more and more people are worried. The cost of living is steadily rising, federal spending seems out of control, and we've seen various financial scandals, and most recently, ArriveCan. My question to the Minister of Finance is extremely simple. Will she finally table a plan to balance the budget when she presents her budget on April 16th? The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I'd like to thank the colleague for his question. Our government understands the importance of supporting Canadians and to do so responsibly, fiscally responsible. We are doing this, and we have maintained our AAA credit rating, and this was reconfirmed last week. We have the lowest debt to GDP ratios in the G7. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And that is all the time we have today.
All right, we're not taking a look in the gallery. That's where we're going to end today's live stream, folks. Thank you so much for watching. What an incredible turnout this was. As you guys leave the stream, I just want to encourage you to smash the like button and subscribe if you haven't yet already. We are very close to 100,000 subscribers, and the only way we're going to get there is if you guys, the viewers, the community, subscribe. So thanks for watching, folks, and we will see you guys same time tomorrow. Bye for now.